This is The Zero Hour with Richard RJ Eskow, produced by the We Act Radio Network in Washington, D.C. and broadcast across the nation. Visit us online at thisisthezerohour.com or at youtube.com/thezerohour. And now your host, Richard RJ Eskow.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the program. You know, if this monologue had a name, its name could be The Theranos Deception, except that sounds like an episode from the original Star Trek. Or it could be called Disrupt This, because it is a morality tale on what happens when you idealize the notion of disrupting businesses over simple common sense. This is a story I've been following for a little while. It's a story of a company called Theranos Incorporated, headed by a woman named Elizabeth Holmes. Elizabeth Holmes was the CEO and spokesperson for this company. Elizabeth Holmes had a habit of giving presentations in a turtleneck, kind of looking a little bit like a female Steve Jobs, and she really pushed that image. So did her backers and financiers to investors who fell in love with Theranos Inc. because they felt that the company, or they believed the company when it said it had a disruptive new technology that would change the way we do blood testing. Well, flash forward a year and a half or so, Theranos Incorporated, reports the Wall Street Journal, has told federal health regulators that the company voided 2 years of results from its Edison blood testing devices, according to a person familiar with the matter. Now, everybody said these Edison machines were revolutionary. That's why at one point, although it had barely any sales, Theranos, like so many technology companies, was valued at an enormously high number, $9 billion. Now, this is $9 billion for a company that we now know didn't have any real technology at all. Theranos has now told regulators it threw out all of its Edison test results from 2014 and 2015. It has told the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services that it is tens of thousands of blood test reports were wrong. It's had to void some results. We've learned in other investigations that Theranos took in blood tests, but then actually gave them to traditional blood testing companies rather than actually doing the work themselves, meaning that it was, in a very real sense, at least at times, a vaporware. Now, what does it mean when a company says that it had to void tens of thousands of tests? It means that tens of thousands of medical decisions, some of which may have been life or death, were made based on bad information. Now, in its glory days, Theranos had a deal with a retail chain to do its tests all across the country. It was going great guns with investors, as we said before. Now, why is it had a deal with Walgreens Pharmacy? That's the retail chain. Why is it that the company did so well based on so little vetting? To me, it has a lot to do with the culture of investment, the culture of the way we worship technology. Look, disruption, quote unquote, which is the watchword of the Silicon Valley, disruption can be good if you're disrupting something that's inefficient or bad. It can be bad if you're disrupting something that's working with something that doesn't. Yet the fact is, our psychology of tech love and tech worship doesn't seem to make much of a distinction between the two. Smart investors would not have valued this company at $9 billion without doing a little bit of hands-on research. But even when the technology isn't digital, this is old-fashioned chemistry, they don't seem to want to do that. All Elizabeth Holmes had to do was dress like an entrepreneur and walk like an entrepreneur and talk like an entrepreneur, and people fell at her feet. Well, you know what? That's why I say disrupt this. It's time to disrupt the whole culture that worships change for the sake of change. Now, I know I sound a little conservative here. We need progressive change, not the kind of change that leads to more concentration of wealth and more foolish worship of wealth and technology without even checking to make sure if the stuff works or not. That's why Theranos should be an object lesson for investors and an object lesson for all of us. Go with what works, not with what you worship.